Hi, everybody. Peter Turner here from ConnexionCFO. I'd like to welcome you to our weekly podcast. This week we have Steve Wilde, who is the CEO and founder of NVOY Technologies. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Peter. How you doing?
Yeah, excellent. Been a great week. So I'm going to let Steve to talk a little bit about his business and about himself. So I guess the first question we've got is, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your journey? I love working with entrepreneurs and I love hearing their journey. So that would be great.
So yeah, thanks, Peter. Appreciate having me on. So my name's Steve Wilde. I'm the founder and CEO at NVOY Technologies. And look, I've probably spent about 16 plus years now in the managed services and IT industry. Worked for a variety from startups across SMEs into large organizations like Xerox, predominantly in sales operations and sort of client-facing roles. And I found NVOY probably just about over 6.5 years ago now. Just before that, I took a career break, actually. I was lucky enough to take 8 months off and go traveling around the world, and actually incorporated NVOY, fun enough, sort of the tail end of that trip. I was over in Australia, in Noosa, fun enough. So I logged on from a beachside cafe, went on to Company's House and registered NVOY Technologies Limited.
Nice.
And look, one of the reasons I started NVOY 6.5 years ago is I'm very passionate about technology, and also then, and obviously even more so now, really, is around hybrid and remote working. And the huge benefits it brings to staff to have more flexibility about how and where that they work. And it's sort of fast forward back to now, 6.5 years later, through the lockdown and whatnot. NVOY were a team of 25 people, predominantly working with fast growing and scaling businesses, helping them to support, automate and secure their IT infrastructure and operations. And look, I'm very lucky to sort of truly say I really love what I do. We're very privileged as well to work with a really outstanding team of people at NVOY, and also look across our clients and partners and suppliers too. And outside of work in the day job, most of my time is focused at home. I've got a young family. I've got a 2.5-year-old and a 1/2-year-old, Henry and Joseph, who keep us very busy and entertained. But look, obviously very happy and fortunate to have a nice family at home, though certainly lacking a lot in sleep at the moment. But hopefully that will change over the coming months. Yeah, that's me.
Good. And so predominantly we work with predominantly small to medium-sized businesses, anywhere from probably 10 seats up to 300, 400, 500 seats. What advice would you give an SME and especially as they scale? You go from 10 seats to 30 seats to 100 seats to 200 seats. What advice would you give in regards to how they structure their IT infrastructure?
We work with many companies on that journey, helping them scale, from startup and beyond as well. So, probably 3 areas I will focus on. And the first thing, and though it is difficult, because sometimes the scaling can happen quickly, try and start with a good foundation where you can. As you're scaling your business, and the IT's got to scale with it, you want to avoid those kind of big overhauls of internal infrastructure and systems, because they can be disruptive. They can be expensive, and also often staff don't like it either. If you take, for example, something like your productivity suite, so maybe you're a Google Workspace business or a Microsoft 365 business, if you are about to start scaling, think which one do you want to stick with for the long run. We've done many migrations with companies as they've got bigger, and again, it costs more and it's more disruptive. So if you can at least start with a solid foundation with some sort of core systems infrastructure, which are hopefully going to be with you for the long run. I know it's difficult if you're a 40, 50 user business where you're going to be, X years down the line, but at least having as good a foundation as you can when you begin the sort of scaling journey. And then probably apart from that, having a good plan and roadmap as well is really important. And whether you work with with the leadership team, whether you have an in-house IT lead, or maybe you work with the managed services business, and it's cliche to say, but that way you can be a bit more proactive rather than reactive in terms of your IT operations and infrastructure. And it's really going to help you to make better decisions as well as a business grows, and get a good ROI as well on those investments that you're making in IT. And that plan and roadmap, it needs to align with the business goals and strategy. IT is there to enable and support the growth of the business. It's not to drive it. So having that plan and roadmap in place, that's a really important thing as well. And then probably apart from that, I say, especially in today's day and age, you've got to prioritize security. That's from day one and ongoing. Whether you're a new startup, 5-10 people, wherever you're growing to sort of 200-300 people, security's got to be really at the forefront of what you're doing, especially sales. And as you get bigger, your risk profile, your area for exposure is only increasing. So think about things like your controls, your policies and procedures, compliance, especially if you're in a highly regulated industry, data backup, user training, all those kind of like the key pillars, if you will, of security. You should consider. So yeah, I think if you can, and I know it's hard, start with as good a foundation as you can when you're about to scale and know you're going to be scaling. Align a plan and roadmap, working with the leadership team, your IT trusted advisor, be it the in-house person or say an external company, a managed service provider, and then always at the moment certainly try and do prioritize security from day one and ongoing.
Okay, and how much do you get involved in the applications that I would probably use when I scale to that next level, or do you help make those selections, those decisions in terms of the applications that we're likely to use?
Yes, we companies, we like to give clients information, so give them the reality of what they're looking at, and then let them make the decisions. But in terms of sort of the core SaaS you have for IT, again, your productivity suite, Microsoft 365, Google Workspace. If we're talking about security, you have things like endpoint protection, your mobile device management software. We kind of, I guess, as a managed service provider, we can't have and support every single application out there. So we kind of have the ones that we feel from research and that's tried and tested that we use internally ourselves, and therefore we may implement those solutions with our clients. So obviously there's a balance if we want to be agnostic, but there's obviously some things that we don't know every single application out there, for example. But obviously, we try and give our clients the advice they need, and a lot of stuff we have used and tried and tested over many years. So we can give reassurances that it's a good solution or a good application or software to use.
And what are the biggest or the most common pitfalls you see when looking to provide your services into clients?
In terms of providing services to clients, is what sort of adopting new technologies and services?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not easy for businesses to adopt new technologies and services. And I think, in terms of maybe where there's some sort of pitfalls, or where sort of clients go wrong, or technology projects in general go wrong, I'd probably say probably like a lack of planning around the implementation. So that onboarding element, and also with the user adoption and training too, that can often cause a few issues, maybe things a bit inefficient, and you have low adoption rates. So from sort of early on in projects and implementing new services and technology, really make sure to get your key stakeholders involved and the actual users of the software or the technology involved as well. They need to see what is the benefit and what problems it's solving, and also how they're going to use it moving forward. And training is a really key part of that as well. Often companies will roll out a new technology or a new service, but the staff, the users, don't actually know how to leverage it, if you will. Yep. Obviously, kind of going back to the security piece, I think putting in new technologies, new services, really taking in those security considerations. If you're adding new technologies to the business, there's always risk of vulnerabilities coming up. So obviously making sure you're doing your testing, your due diligence, and making sure to reduce those security risks where you can. And then I think also, if you're a scaling business, you might be adopting multiple different technologies, different SaaS and applications. There's got to be a good steer and a good push on how those or how everything's going to work together. So the integrations and the workflows. Otherwise, you end up with as you grow, end up with quite a fragmented technology environment. It makes it difficult to support, makes it difficult to manage, difficult to secure. So the integration piece is really important, especially for customer and user experience who are potentially using that software technology that you're using. Integration is really key.
So as an outsourced provider, I'm outsourcing that whole integration piece to you, aren't I? Is that right?
Yes, well, yeah, absolutely. It's a big part that we take care of. But again, essentially, as a business, there's other things. There may be some things like your core IT operations. There may be other things outside of that may be integration considerations. Obviously, we can do things from that standpoint, but it obviously involves involvement for other stakeholders in the business to make sure that those those other areas as well are taken consideration of. But obviously on our side, if we're implementing a stack of solutions, mobile device management, endpoint protection, service desk tools, from our standpoint, as we did that to clients, we use tools which are integrated and work well together.
Cool. And there's a big talk about AI now, and especially around automation, especially around efficiency. Where do you see AI impacting the services that you provide, and how do you feel? So that's the first question. And how do you feel, or where do you feel are the lowest hanging fruits in terms of providing a level of automation inside your client base?
Yeah, so AI is big news in the limelight at the moment. Where I see it and where we're looking at in terms of our business, it's probably kind of at the very front end in terms of like a customer engagement, and also kind of then internally within the business, kind of directly assisting a staff member. So if I can kind of give them information, we're doing some testing and looking at AI in terms of how we can maybe use that on the service desk, but maybe for that sort of first line interaction. So when it's a fairly sort of simple, straightforward request, how we can use AI to get the customer a very quick response and get them their information. And you can see this across lots of different businesses. If you go on a website, there's some kind of chatbot which is using AI, and you can now communicate with it more and get more information. And then internally within the business, I think this is probably the same for many organizations, we can use AI, already using AI to things like taking meeting notes, to use producing documents, kind of just reducing kind of manual labor time, if you will, and just leveraging AI to do things faster. So at the moment, that's where I see it, very much at the front and very much in the business, close to an employee. I think it's still going to be certainly even for us and the business and the market I see, probably another 1 or 2 years ahead before it's used en masse across the business. We're doing quite a lot at the moment with, for example, Microsoft Copilot. A lot of businesses are adopting this now, but it's very much kind of, with a lot of businesses, it's not necessarily rolled out across all 400 staff members. You've got a couple of people in marketing testing it. You've got maybe someone in finance testing it. There's different user groups, because companies are there's a lot of concern, especially around security and data protection, about rolling this out en masse. And there's various sort of stories you may have seen in the press about someone that's got Copilot AI, and an employee's asked it the question, and it's managed to find some file access somewhere, grab that information, brought it back to the employee, and they've been given some information which they probably shouldn't have had access to, but because the tool is powerful and it can do that. So it's like a kind of Pandora's box, but I think a lot of companies they're taking their time. There's a lot around AI readiness as well at the moment, to make sure your business is ready to adopt AI, and then kind of taking things one step by step. So I think AI, that's probably what I sort of see on the AI side. In terms of automation, which it's a different thing, though you can also use AI for some automation. And I think actually a lot of businesses are probably missing out at the moment on automation, because a lot of the hype is around AI, and there's a lot of benefits of automation, getting rid of those very manual business tasks, in terms of cost saving, efficiency saving, and also, in terms of job satisfaction, so that people don't have to do those very sort of manual tasks, and they can save a lot of time. And one particular area we're doing quite a lot on the IT operations front in terms of automation is around new starter onboarding and leaver offboarding, sometimes known as your sort of JML, joiners, movers, leavers. Yep. If you think of a business, maybe if I take an example, so you've got a company, maybe they're at 100 and 150 staff, and they're now starting to really grow and scale. They're doing a lot of onboarding. So there's still going to be a lot of onboarding, some offboarding of that as well, maybe some team changes. And often with companies, HR adding someone in the HR system, and it's a manual process. Someone's, right, we've got to give the person their identity and their access. We've got to provision SaaS. Office manager or operations team are ordering a laptop. Often, again, it's a manual process of building laptops. Laptop's got to be into the team, be built, sent out to the end user. And actually, if someone leaves, that process can often be more time consuming and slightly more painful. Laptops collected, brought back. Is SaaS being deprovisioned properly? A lot of companies, especially if you're sort of 150, 200 headcount, and you've got 10, 20, 30 different SaaS products, and you're leaving 5, 10 licenses on the system not deprovisioned, that's racking up costs. So it's a very manual process, and there's a lot of room for error as well. Someone gives a new finance manager joins, they're given access to the wrong folder or file. So what we're doing in this area is streamlining and automating this process. It's a mix of using some software and solutions and a bit of resources from our service desk as well, but leveraging tools like Okta, for example. HR manager goes and adds the employee on the HR system, and it triggers a workflow to create their identity, provision access, create the SaaS, use something called roles-based access control. So if the finance manager is joining, we know he or she needs access to these particular resources and these particular SaaS. Automates the ordering of the hardware, the shipping, zero-touch provision of laptops. So just basically streamlines all this manual work. And when a business is looking to grow and scale, if you imagine if you're hiring, 10 people a week or X amount per month, you can remove all this manual work and have it delivered as a service. And we're seeing a lot of this is becoming really popular, especially with companies when they are getting into the kind of larger seat numbers, larger employee numbers, and also actually doing a lot of hiring as well.
Yeah. So, and how do you feel that all of that impacts the smaller businesses? Maybe the businesses with staff between 10 to 50. I mean, they don't necessarily have access to all of those types of applications, and maybe they should, but maybe we just think when we're a smaller business we don't need them at the moment. But actually, that level of automation is planning for in advance of that requirement.
Yeah, I think that probably goes back to the session about having that roadmap and that plan. If you're hiring, one person a month, the automation, you're not going to get ROI on that investment to begin with. But if you say there's a big event coming up, like a Series B raise or something like that, and you're going to be then significantly growing the workforce, having that on your roadmap a bit later down the line would be sort of good planning. So I think automation, is good, but you need to have the scale there to make it work. So if you're a smaller business and there's not that many manual tasks, the returns on automation will be not low or not really worth doing it. But it's kind of just knowing, I suppose, maybe where that pinch point is when you get to a certain size. And I think that's where you go, your in-house IT person or your managed IT service provider, that's when they can help you with that roadmap, help to advise where can we automate and when on our roadmap should we look at investing in that automation.
Okay. And probably as a final question, where do you feel is the biggest commercial risk for a fast-growing, scaling business? From a technical
Yeah, so I mean, not to give like one specific area, I'd probably say in general, it's the obvious one. It's the one that's often underinvested in as well, and that's certainly security. I think it's from many of the business that we speak to and some new customers, it's definitely one that's keeping people up at night. I think worrying, but then that doesn't necessarily translate into the money within the business to invest. And it is challenging because there's a lot of overwhelm there. Where do we focus? There's a lot of noise. Where do we actually invest in security as a business? Because you can spend an awful lot of money, and often in areas which actually the money can be better invested in different areas. I think in terms of the consideration of it as a risk, if you do have a severe security breach or event, it can disrupt or completely halt your operations. So from a revenue perspective, that's obviously very bad. And obviously the longer term thing around, reputational damage as well is something to consider. We actually were called into a business about 6 months ago, and they had a major security breach. They had about 6% of their IT services in the cloud, about 40% were still on-prem, and they were hit with a ransomware attack. And all the cloud service were fine because the ransomware didn't make it there. But yeah, it took over and got into a lot of their on-premises systems, one of which actually was an oil finance system. And we obviously were called in to it ended up being a complete wipe and rebuild of the network. They had some data backup, but it was a sort of manual restore process. But it really caused some major downtime, and the business incurred a lot of costs. So it was very sort of clear risk there. And I think there's a lot in the news about the higher profile and larger companies. We hear about an airline. Obviously, sadly, the NHS has had a few issues over the past 4 months. We've sort of seen on the BBC website, etc. But I guess the kind of SME market, doesn't make the papers, if you will, but it's definitely happening a lot, and it's a lot more frequent. But I think as a business, you just got to look at that as a risk. kind of alluded to earlier, I sort of see the sort of 5 key pillars that you want to look at in terms of your security. The first is your controls. So this is how you prevent and detect and correct a security incident as a mix of software, your endpoint protection, also the human resources, and you have to have both. You can't have one or the other, or one without the other. The second thing is thinking about your policies and procedures. That's really key. Obviously, as the business that we're in, we have ISO 27001, etc. I know that's not always suitable for all businesses, and it may be something that they do later on. But having a basic information security policy, policy for things like bring your own device for companies with hybrid remote workers, and certainly having a like a BCP, business continuity plan. And that's really key, because if there is a big disaster and you don't know what to do when it happens, it's going to be, you need to act fast, and that's very important. And the third thing is probably that compliance piece. So we work with quite a few clients in highly regulated industries. They might be financial services or fintech. There could be healthcare or healthcare technology. So those kind of industries, especially from the reputational standpoint as well, there's a lot you've got to think about there. And then one thing which I often see overlook as well, which is the 4 key thing, is around data backup and restore. Just because your data is in Office 365, you still need to look at having a backup as well. It's very unlikely, but if something did happen to your Microsoft tenant, you need to be able to have data backed up, and also actually be able to restore it as well. That's pretty key. And probably the fifth and final thing, which is probably argue actually is the most important thing to invest in, and that is around your user training. Because at the moment, a lot of security breaches are stemming from, scamming, phishing, and we were just talking about AI just now. You may have seen, and many finance people will see, we get it in our finance inbox. End of the month, I need you to urgently pay this invoice. It's masked as a key person, could be the CFO, and they're getting forever smarter and more intelligent. They're even looking at the way that someone would write your email within the business, and copying the language. So they're getting very smart. So user training is really key. Ourselves and clients, we've used platforms maybe like KnowBe4. So you've got your kind of phishing testing, your staff training. So I'd say that is a really key area to invest in, and not just once a year you do a 30-minute quick multiple choice test. Having a decent cadence and doing some internal awareness training as well, that's really important. So yes, it's definitely a big risk I see for SMEs, but looking at those sort of 5 pillars that I sort of recommend, and having that in your plan is really important. Look, and there's always the risk there, but it's just about reducing that risk as much as possible.
Okay, I've got one final question, and this is not so more about what your business does and your services, but more about you and how you structured your board, and do you make use of non-execs or advisors, and as a CEO and founder, what other additional resources or people do you use in terms of helping you on your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, so look, we as a business, we're a completely bootstrap business. Team of 25, we do around sort of 2 million a year in revenue, mostly recurring, and the odds of getting here from a startup business are actually quite slim. And one of the ways that we did it, and a huge advantage we had, was looking at fractional resources, especially in the leadership team. We couldn't afford a full-time CFO, but we were able to get a fractional one who brought a wealth of experience. And also, look, for me as I guess as a still kind of young CEO, it was great to also have that element of kind of guidance and mentorship. And also, there's some things you're just stuck on and you need some help with. So it's been a huge benefit actually to leverage fractional resources at leadership, and even throughout the business show, we've at times hired part-time resources to do something. As a small business, you don't always necessarily need a full-time role in a particular position, and having a fractional part-time person to assist you is really good to scale. Good.
Steve, thank you very much for your time today. I wish you all your best in your journey. I know we're going to stay in touch. Yes, I wish you all the best, and thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Peter. Great to speak.
Bye, everybody.